Yes, members, you will come to appreciate that today we've taken a little bit long without starting, but it has all been the mercy of Allah, for He has decided to enrich us with rain. Alhamdulillah. This is one of the greatest moments upon which we should supplicate to Allah when it is raining. So use the opportunity and talk to God, because where we are going, it is Allah who knows how best we can survive. We thank Allah that we have been able to make it to this point. Alhamdulillah. All praises are due to Him, and may His mercies be upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all his followers. Today we are dealing with family relations. Family relations. It is such a good idea that we reconsider the different topics as we did in the previous classes. Today I came to the consensus with myself that we should revisit the very first topics of family. You will come to realize that the list of covered topics in family are 4. We have marriages, we have children, we have succession 1 and succession 2. So the presumption is at the end of this term, you should be able to have appreciated all the necessary topics there under. You should be able to appreciate the fact that marriages, the different types of marriages, how marriages are celebrated, the prerequisites of each and every type of marriage. Then you also appreciate void and voidable marriages, what factors invalidate a marriage, the distinction between null and void and avoidable marriages, the different remedies in the different circumstances. You should also be able to appreciate the fact that in certain circumstances, marriages don't exist. So it is upon you to appreciate all those in this first topic. So when it comes to marriages, remember, marriages is a combination of marriage, divorce, and separation. But you can't separate or divorce what you have not yet created. So you should be able to appreciate the fact that we first create relations. So when you are dealing with this course unit is known as family relations. So everything you're going to be dealing with is basically looking at a relationship. How do you create a relationship? Who qualifies to create a relationship? Okay. How do we commence? How does this relationship turn into a legal relationship? how do we determine existence of a valid relationship? So everything in family rotates around a relationship. That is why it is called a relational cause unit. Be it succession, be it divorce, be it separation, be it children, everything rotates around a relationship. Okay? So, under such circumstances, we should appreciate what is this kind of relationship. So, when we are dealing with this course unit, what we are basically going to use is going to be a question approach. And in this format, we shall raise different questions, but when we are answering them, we shall be basically covering the course unit. Reason being, we are aiming at understanding. This is our last week to orals. If you've been able to have a chat with your predecessors, the final exam was difficult. But most of them who have made it, it was because of preparation for orals. And how do we prepare for orals? By extremely understanding the concept. So make sure you appreciate the concept. And inshallah, by the end of this, we shall have covered a couple of the same. And I believe we shall have appreciated the same. So our very first question will be, what is a marriage? Or what amounts to a marriage? Then our second question will be, who can enter into marriage? Who can enter into marriage? When we are dealing with who can enter, basically here we are looking at capacity to enter into a contract of marriage. Okay? Then we shall also look at what are the prerequisites of a valid marriage, what we call general prerequisites. General prerequisites of a valid marriage. Then we shall look at the different types of marriages. The different types of marriages. Under these different types of marriages, you should be able to appreciate the fact that we shall look at what we call specific prerequisites, nature of this marriage, and how it is celebrated. Then after that, we shall look at void and voidable marriages. Then after that, we shall be at liberty to look at what we call duties and obligations upon entering into the marriage contract. Inshallah. So are we at par, colleagues? Okay, so let's first deal with the first question. Okay, our very first question is, what is or what amounts to a marriage? When you look at our Ugandan laws, these laws do not define, they don't have a definite definition of what is marriage. However, at case law, we have the celebrated authority of Hyde versus Hyde. This authority defines marriage to mean the union of man and woman with the exclusion of others for life. When you break down that definition, it has the word union. Okay? So that means once you enter into marriage, you are united. You become one person with the exclusion of others. Then for life, in Hyde versus Hyde, they believe that there is no divorce. Okay? They believe that there is no divorce for that definition. However, when you look at that definition, it basically caters for the monogamous type of marriage. So the law has extended a little bit to shift from that position in the current legal regime. So after us appreciating that marriage is the union of man and woman, so ask yourself, who has capacity to contract a marriage? Can anyone contract a marriage? Or due to the fact that marriage is a contract per se, all the grounds of a valid contract, of capacity to contract, do equally apply here under. Okay? So, Council Mwanga Arafat, who has capacity to enter into marriage?
Thank you. A person has capacity to enter into a marriage if that person has capacity to contract. For example, a person should be of age. The Constitution says 18 years of age.
Which law, Council?
Pardon?
Which law?
The Constitution defining someone who can enter into a marriage should be someone of 18 years.
Reference should be made to Article 31 of the 1995 Constitution, which is to the effect that every person of majority age has a right to form a family.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So the first requirement is you should be of majority age. We go on.
Then another thing concerning still capacity, we can look at the soundness of mind. As someone, because you have to enter into a marriage willfully, maybe willfully, voluntarily, without coercion or undue influence. So someone has to be of sound mind, and they're able to understand what they are doing, and they are able to understand what they are contracting to.
Okay. So another requirement, you should be of sound mind. Of recent, the late Asia and Charles, they conducted something which is similar to marriage. It was all over internet, where everyone was talking about their marriage.
Councillor Rashid, I think you're muted.
Okay. As I've been submitting that in regards to capacity, we are basically looking at those two, age and the mental status. Okay. So under such circumstances, we should learn to differentiate between what we call prerequisites. Prerequisites, these are things you should first put into consideration. Then capacity, basically on you an individual, do you qualify? For example, okay, in Islam, capacities is in different categories. Okay, so not this normal capacity that we study in the law. So that takes us to our next step known as general prerequisites. When you look at these general prerequisites, they cut across all the types of marriages. Okay, but when we dig deep, each marriage, each type of marriage has its different prerequisites. But these prerequisites we're going to look at, they are basically general. They apply in each and every marriage. So before the marriage takes place, the following factors should be put into consideration. Marriage, that's why they are called general prerequisite, which applies to each and every type of marriage, is what we call prohibited degrees. Prohibited degrees are divided into two. We have one that is affinity and then kindred. Okay, we have affinity and then kindred. Council Gibbs, can you kindly differentiate for us the two? Yes. What is the distinction between prohibited degrees of affinity and kindred?
Advocate Rashid.
Yes.
I think this relate to relationship by birth or descent, or sometimes by marriage.
What type is that?
This is specifically to do with, for example, if we say by infinite, this means that the relationship that one spouse has by virtue of their marriage to blood relatives of the other. So that is affinity.
Yes.
And some of the examples could be like I think when we studied, this was first, the first one we studied, you could find a clan is like in Buganda applicable here, if you're in the same clan.
Yes.
Like if you are the Ngavi clan, you may not be allowed to marry the fellow Ngavi clan. I think that's what
then the other.
Then kindred, think this is majorly relating to that one. First guide me on that one.
We have two relationships, okay? One is created by blood relations, and another one is created by marriage relations. Okay? Blood relations.
Inbreed must be the one related to blood relations.
Okay? These are people you are related to by blood. You are not allowed. In Islam, the Holy Quran says, marry those that your right hands possess. That means you marry those that Allah has allowed you to get married to, but not everyone. Okay? So those that our right hands possess, those are the persons that Allah has decreed upon us to get married to. And among those that are prohibited, that our right hands do not possess, include one, our blood sisters and brothers. Then two, cousins, nieces. It is, you see, when you follow that lineage, okay, persons you are related to by blood, okay, we are not allowed to marry them. So those we are related to by blood, Allah has not allowed us to marry them. Same applies to here. When you read the case of Bruno Chiuwa, Ivan Serunkuma, okay, that case clearly defines what amounts to prohibited degrees. Then another prerequisite, consent of the parties. Consent of the parties. The two persons intending to get married, they should have consented as two, because that's why they are always referred to as the two consenting adults. Because marriage is a contract, it should be contracted by your free will. So under that such circumstances, the meaning of free will, okay, you should have agreed that I am taking Gibbs, okay? When there are nothing like external factors that your mother has pushed you to make a decision, because this is a lifetime decision you're going to make. So you should make it with a sober mind. So the law has put that clear, that this marriage should be with your free will. It is a prerequisite. Then another prerequisite is consent of the guardian. Consent of the guardian. So you should be able to appreciate that there is no category of marriage where the guardian isn't paramount. So guardians are so paramount in celebrating these marriages. Their consent is so paramount. No marriage will succeed unless you have consent from your guardian. Okay? Are we together? Yes, can someone get?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Rashid, doesn't the Constitution do away with that issue of consent of the parents? Because it basically gives the liberty to persons of 18 years and above, man or woman, to marry. They can marry and start up a family. Like, it doesn't bring in that element of like the parents have to consent. If you go into a marriage and the parents have not consented, by the two parties have entered into a consensus and have decided to marry each other, but the parents are in disagreement, can that invalidate a marriage? And I don't think so.
Let's bring back the opinion to class. Does consent of the guardian invalidate a marriage?
No.
Let's get another opinion from class.
Because I don't think the consent of the parents is so necessary if we return to the legal side.
Okay.
In English, is a little what we call it is material but not paramount. I don't know if you read the case. Okay, it was not a case, it was a scenario of Katende Sempevo, of Katende, when he refused to attend his daughter's wedding because she was wedding a lawyer who had been his shamba boy. The wedding went ahead with or without him. And it was not declared.
Yes, Council Mary. Let's hear from Council Mary.
Yes, Councillor Rashid, I'm here. I think, just to supplement, where the consent of the guardian would be needed most is under Section 17 of the Marriages Act, where it says consent to marriage of minors. That section says that if the person intending to be married is under 21 years, right, and that person has not yet been a widow or widower, the written consent of the father or the mother or the guardian is needed before that marriage can proceed.
So that means if you are below 21 years, it is mandatory to have written consent from the guardian. But if you've exceeded 21 years, consent may not be paramount. Okay? So that is, but however, when they ask you about the same, don't leave it out, because in such circumstances, we deal with marks. Okay, we deal with marks. We are looking for marks. Okay, so the more you justify your position, the more you become argumentative but persuasive at the same time. Okay, so
also,
any other? Yes.
Since these days it is a requirement for one to have that traditional kwanjula, that is where also the consent of the parents would be more paramount, because before you even go to church, they ask you, did these people...
It is mandatory.
Council, I don't think it's mandatory to do the kwanjula thing. It depends on what kind of marriage you are going to celebrate.
Because the kwanjula itself is a type of marriage.
It's a marriage, yes. It's not mandatory.
Okay. It is in practice terms, but under the law, the position is settled. So do you have any other general prerequisites to these marriages? So now, after we've looked at the general prerequisites of marriages, then ask yourself, what are the different types of marriages that can be contracted. So the presumption is you understand what is marriage, you understand who can enter into this marriage.
Council,
Yes, counsel.
excuse me, Council.
Yes, counsel.
What about the prerequisite of an existing
Counsel is submitting on existence of a subsisting marriage.
existing marriage?
I think that is a specific one. We have marriages that where that one doesn't operate. It is not a bar. Okay? It is not a bar. Okay? It isn't a bar, counsel. It is a specific one. So the presumption is you understand what is marriage, you understand who can enter into the marriage contract, and then what are the necessary prerequisites, things you should notify yourself with before you enter into the marriage thing. So the presumption is we've settled all those. So now we want to choose the most appropriate type of marriage that we are going for. Automatically, we shall start with the best of the best. We shall start with the Muhammadan marriages. The Muhammadan marriages. So first things first, okay? What are the specific prerequisites of Muhammadan marriages? The specific, remember we looked at the general. So the presumption is you will apply the general prerequisites and then zero down to these specific ones, you add them. Okay? So the first prerequisite in Muhammadan marriages, as per section 2 of the Muhammadan Marriage and Divorce Act, this is, okay, this is, it should be celebrated between persons prophesizing the Muhammadan religion. Between two people prophesizing the Muhammadan religion. So the question is, what category of people that do amount to Muhammadan religions? When you look at as well section 2 of the Muhammadan Marriage Act, okay, these are believers, okay, of the Islamic faith, and they are subscribers to the Holy Book, that is the Quran, and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so when you look at that, so those are people who prophesize the Islamic religion. So this implies that a man should be prophesizing the Muhammadan religion as well as the woman. Okay, so both of them should be prophesizing the Muhammadan religion. However, there is a contention on such marriages, okay, whether a Muslim can get married to a non-Muslim. That has gotten a number of interpretations from the different scholars of Islam. Okay, but the right thing would and is you should get married to a person who is prophesizing the Muhammadan religion. The rationale behind that is to ensure that the Ummah is extended to generations and generations. Okay. So the second prerequisite of the Muhammadan marriages is the mahar. When you look at Quran chapter 4 verse 4, it says that and give the women upon marriage their bridal gifts graciously. But if they give up willingly to you anything of it, then take it in satisfaction and ease. The gist of this provision says, and give the women upon marriage their bridal gifts graciously. What does this mean? That when we are getting married to the Muhammadan, in the Muhammadan way, it is so paramount that you give this wife of yours her bridal gift. This is the mahar. You see that Islam is the only religion which says that women should be given gifts, because it takes a lot for a woman to come to the conclusion that yes, my story ends and begins with Gibbs. So it only takes that strong and courageous woman to come up with that decision. So why don't you appreciate her and give her her gifts upon marriage graciously? That's why she tells you, can you afford this or no? You sit and negotiate, because the Quran says you should give them. So you want to disobey the rules of Allah. But what you should note that since marriage is based on consent, the issue of mahar, where you've not given her, the marriage isn't marriage. And where you give her and you borrow that mahar, claiming that you will return, on the day that you have agreed upon it and you don't return the mahar, there is no marriage. If you've agreed, let's assume, at a sum of 200 shillings, but because of the financial issues, you give her 100k and you promise to return the balance. The day she demands for that balance and you don't respond positively, no marriage literally. So the issue of mahar is so paramount in Islam. Okay. Then the second non-debatable prerequisite in Islam, consent of the wali, that is consent of the guardian. In Islam, we do believe that the hereafter is beneath our parents. So under such circumstances, you cannot celebrate any marriage without their consent. It is prohibited. So under such circumstances, you should be able to appreciate the fact that in Muhammadan marriages, the issue of consent of a guardian is so paramount, unlike other circumstances. Okay? Unlike other circumstances. So any question from that point of view or any addition? Council Kruthum, any addition on the prerequisites of Islamic marriages before we proceed to mode of celebration?
I've gotten a question to put forward.
Okay.
So you have said that Mohammedan marriages are only for the persons prophesying to the religion. And now my question is, now if at all your a man and then you marry a non-Muslim, does that one make you cease to be a Muslim?
No,
So does
I
this
said
prerequisite
that position has a number of statutory interpretations from the scholars of Islam. There is a saying that when people interpret this provision of the Holy Quran, that is chapter 4 verse 3, which says that, and if you fear that will not do just with the orphan girls, then marry those that please you of other women. Okay, from that, okay, marry those that please you of other women. That provision has gotten a number of interpretations. Okay, some people say that from that, okay, and the teachings of the prophet, people are allowed to marry people from people of the book. But the question is, what amounts to people of the book? People of the book are always referred to as those who believe in Torah and Injil. That is the Old Testament, okay, basically, and the Holy Bible. But it is prudent, because the essence of restricting this marriage to people prophesying the Muhammadan religion is to create a strong bond of Islam. That's why Islam has stood the test of time, generation by generation. And to put that clear, women are not totally allowed to get married to non-Muslim men. So the second way of interpreting that provision is that men are allowed to marry people prophesying or people of the book. However, that position is questionable for certain reasons that are well known, because the essence of this is Islam. Okay, and one of the prerequisites, when the prophet was asked about the qualities of a good spouse, he was so paramount that if you appreciate basically two things, his religion, that means he should be prophesying the Muhammadan religion. So when you combine the hadith and the provisions of the Holy Quran, it takes us back to that it should be celebrated between persons prophesying the Muhammadan religion. Yes, Council, any other question?
Maybe we look at another prerequisite, that marriage under Islam is heterosexual. Could that one be a prerequisite?
That's a general prerequisite. Okay, we read it from the Constitution. Okay, it's a general, man and woman.
Okay.
You can corroborate that position with the case of Corbett versus Corbett.
Okay.
And the current bill that is not yet endorsed, the anti-homosexuality bill. Okay, so are we together? So then, after looking at the prerequisites, we presume that you have all the necessary prerequisites of conducting the Muhammadan marriages. Then we got how it is celebrated. Okay, when you are looking at celebration of a marriage, there are things you should put into consideration. And these include place, time, and who officiates this marriage. So when it comes to the Muhammadan marriages, one, we look at where do we celebrate these marriages from? Where do we celebrate these marriages from? When you look at the current regime, okay, when it comes to the Islamic function of marriage, that is nikah, it is always celebrated at the home of the guardian of the intending wife. Okay, the guardian of the intending wife. If not, it is conducted at one of the authorized places, that is the mosque. But initially and essentially, it is contracted in the first place that we mentioned. Okay. Then after looking at the place, look at by who officiates this marriage. When you look at the Muhammadan marriage settings, it is also officiated by a licensed minister. A licensed minister here in referred to as a licensed sheikh to celebrate marriages in such circumstances. Not all those that are around can officiate the marriage ceremony. La. Okay? It is only restricted to officers that are authorized. Then we have time. What time do we celebrate these marriages? What's the time in celebrating Islamic marriages? Council Sophie D2, kindly enlighten us on the time of celebrating the Muhammadan marriages, beginning and ending, inshallah. Yes, Council. Yes, Council. Council Nagai Hafswa, what is the time of celebrating the Muhammadan marriages? Yes? Council Mwangi, what is the time of celebrating Muhammadan marriages?
Councillor Rashid, I'm not so sure about that time, but I think it's supposed to be during daytime, not at night.
Okay. What is the first prayer in Islam?
Subuhi.
Subuhi.
At what time does that prayer end?
Over 7:14.
Okay. So literally it starts at 8. Okay. That's the starting time. Then what's the last prayer in Islam?
Isha. Isha'i.
But we are not allowed, okay, to get to the time of Isha'i when we are still officiating marriage. Okay. So that means before we go for Isha'i, we should have concluded the marriage ceremony. So that means the time of ending is after what prayer? Before you go to Isha'i. Okay. That time is called
8.
Before you go to 8, you have the Islamic name. It's called Bada
Badaswe.
Checho. Okay? It's called Bada Aswili. Before the sun, okay, disappears. So that means it is between 8 and basically 6 or 7 around there. Okay? That is the time of celebrating the Muhammadan marriages. You're not supposed to exceed Aswili in Islam. The rationale behind that, Allah indeed is the best knower and is so merciful. Then on top of that, after the time, we need to look at witnesses. All marriages in Islam are supposed to be witnessed. And the degree of witnesses in Islam is clearly stipulated in the Holy Quran. Okay? Where you are using men, we use 2. Okay? We use 2 or more. But where you are using men and you use 2, but where you are using women, instead of 2, you use 4. Where you are using men and women, if you have 1 man, you should have 2 women. What is the rationale behind that category of evidence in Islam? It is because women are moody and they are forgetful. So 1 lady may not be sufficient, needs another one to corroborate that evidence that there was marriage. But when you are using strong men, you use only 2 witnesses, they are sufficient. Okay? So you see, we looked at how we start the prerequisites and now we have celebrated the marriage. So this marriage, when you are looking at its celebration, you look at place, who, time, and witnesses. Any question on the Muhammadan type of marriage before we deal with the second type?
Yes, Cancer, I have a question.
Yes.
Are there days on which you cannot celebrate the marriage.
No?
Council, I have a question.
Yes, Council.
Yes. One, Council, should it be in the place of worship, in the mosque? Two, the divorce side, especially when it's a woman.
Okay. Council, we've not yet reached the time of divorce, yeah? We've not reached the time of divorce. When we get to divorce, we shall appreciate it. We want to first basically deal with the issue of celebrating this marriage that we enter into. After entering into these marriages, okay, then we shall be able to see duties and obligations. Then later we separate and divorce. Okay. So Cancer has been asking whether it is mandatory for it to be celebrated in a mosque or a licensed place of worship. It is not mandatory, Cancer. Okay. That's why some marriages are contracted indoor at home. Okay. At home. Okay. So it is not basically a requirement, that place. Okay. But we had to mention it. Yes.
Does that imply that the requirement for a gazetted place of marriage does not extend to the Muhammadan marriages?
Yes.
Much obliged.
Oh, welcome, guys. Okay. Any other question?
Kindly repeat for me the witnesses. If it is a man, it is one witness, and if it is a woman, there are two witnesses.
We've said that when you are dealing with witnesses in Islam, where there is one man is, okay, two women are equivalent to one man. So where you have witnesses and they are all men, you need two. Where you have witnesses and they are all women, you need four. Okay? Because one man is equivalent to two women. Yes. Okay. Any other question before you cross to another type of marriages? Should we cross? Then after that, we shall look at the nature of this marriage. Muhammadan marriages are polygamous in nature. Are polygamous in nature. However, the issue of polygamous is subject to interpretation of the law. When you read Quran chapter 4, verse 3, it says, and if you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan girls, then marry those of other women, 2 or 3 or 4. 2 or 3 or 4. So that is the provision that is read, and people justify it that in Islam, or it gives the position that in Islam you are allowed to marry more than one. But when you are reading the provisions of the law, because the supreme law we have is the Holy Quran, the provisions of the law, they have conditions at the start and at the end. Okay? And it says, but if you fear that you will not be just, then marry only one, or those your right hands possess. That is more suitable, that you may not incline to injustice. When you read this provision at the start and at the end, it puts conditions for you to marry more than one. And when you read this Holy Quran, okay, it calls basically those who are believers, or you who believe. This implies that a believer who fears that he won't do just, okay, because when you deal with an injustice, Allah doesn't allow injustices. So if you feel that you can't be just to 3, 2, or 4, please marry one. Because Allah is telling us, if you marry one, that one woman is suitable for you, and you will not incline to injustice. You will always be just to that one person. So it depends how we interpret this provision. Yes, it gives you leeway to marry more than one. However, in interpreting it, it has a condition, and which condition is so paramount, because justice is a case-to-case basis. What is an injustice to you may not be an injustice to me. So in such circumstances, it is a case-to-case basis. So the nature of Islamic marriages is basically polygamous, but with a condition. It's not basically open to polygamous. There are things you should put into consideration before coming to the conclusion that you're going to marry more than one. So those who are intending to cross because of marrying more than one, may Allah guide you right. Any question on the nature of the Muhammadan marriages? Are we all together? Should we cross to the next type of marriages?
So I have a question.
Yes.
The issue of age when it comes to Muhammadan marriage. Could you please clarify on that issue?
When you read Quran chapter 4 verse 6, it says, and test the orphans in their abilities and until they reach marriageable age. In Islam, the law has not stated the exact age. But when you read the Quran, it gives us a broader understanding. Why? marriageable age is a case-to-case basis. But when you read it, basically it talks about that when they see their menses. Reason, since we stay in different climate zones, people see their menses at different stages. So the presumption is the time when you see your menses, you can conceive under such circumstances. So to avoid temptations, it is prudent that if these girls see their menses, they are ready for marriage. Okay? So age is a case-to-case basis in Islam. But however, when you read Quran, chapter 1, verse 2, it says, "This is the book about which there is no doubt for guidance of mankind." The Quran has guidance from all different generations. So it is read and interpreted according to the current situations. So when you look at the current situations, okay, some girls see their menses when they are 7, others at 8, and it is not applicable at that stage. Okay, that's why the provision says when they reach their marriageable. So at the current situation, you find a girl who has seen her menses when she can't contract a marriage because the age is extremely low. So it is read because it encounters even the current generation. Any other question, Council?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Okay, so should we go to another type of marriage? So let's go to customary marriages. Customary marriages. The customary marriages are governed by the Customary Marriage Act. The first prerequisite of that marriage, one, it should be celebrated according to the African customs of any of the parties to that marriage. Any. So that means we can consider for the bride or the groom. But I'm still asking myself, who sat down and came up with a suggestion that we should only consider the customs of a particular group? Whoever invented that thing, I don't know. I don't know. Okay? If you wake up one morning and you say, Nenda kwa Angela Gibbs, Okay. We see Council Veronica say organizing when she's going to introduce Gibbs. And you bring bride price to the man's home. Will you die? Council Gibbs, will they die? Yes, Council Monge.
No, sir.
One ma.
Yeah.
Council Monge.
Yes,
Yes?
thank you. I think for customary marriages, since it's celebrated in accordance to the customs of the area, let's say, localities, like for example, in the Buganda, it's the woman that will introduce the man to the parents. In different societies, we'll find that it's the man that introducing. In other societies, we'll find that it's the woman giving the bride. It's called what is it called? Dowry. Yeah. The bride price, something like that, to the man. So I think it basically depends on the custom of a different society.
So which customs where the woman is the one taking bride price? Jeff wants to go there.
I think, for example, okay, it might not be here in Uganda, but in different areas, you never know. But I think the more if you traverse the country or Africa around, you will find such customs that.
Council,
for example, there are
Indian men do pay bride price to the. Sorry, Indian women do pay bride price to the men.
Yes, and that is their custom.
Jeff, I hope you've heard. But as here, whoever invaded that culture, I don't know. People should interpret the law. Okay, so we've seen that the first prerequisite, it's supposed to be according to the customs of any. Okay, the discretion is yours. Okay, then another prerequisite is what we call bride price. Bride price. Okay, is called bride price. So we have different laws that are really making it emphatic to the issue of bride price. When you look at that issue, we have two celebrated cases. Council Mwonge, which cases do we have here that explain about the same? Yes, Council. Well, I'm like, we have two cases that really explain the issue of bride price. The first one.
There is that notarial case of Mifumi versus Attorney General, which was challenging the return of bride price to the girl's parents. Let's say the woman who has been married, the wife, and it was stated that bride price is not it's not like a price like how it's tagged as a price that you are buying, because a price you are buying someone for a certain price, so it will be bride price. Then the court was like, court stated that it's basically more of an appreciation. It's a token of appreciation. It's not that you, when you pay bride price, you have owned the woman, because a person is not regarded as a property to someone. That's one I know. For me versus Attorney General on bride price.
Okay. Councillor Gibbs. So, when you look at the issue of bride price, it is a case-to-case basis. It is a requirement that bride price should be paid in the African setting to appreciate the parents of bringing up this beautiful wife of yours. However, it should be noted that bride price should be paid to capacity. So, payment of half bride price treats the marriage differently. Okay? So, where the bride price is partially paid, the marriage is valid until the demand is made and you do not respond. Okay? Until you do not respond. So you should be ready to receive such facts. Okay? Then, after, another issue on bride price, you should note that bride price should be received by the guardians or parents. There is a case that I'll share if I come across it. It is a Ugandan case that has that position, where a certain man in Mbarara contracted was cohabiting with someone, and they agreed that before we do the so-called customary marriage, first construct for me a house, which the man did. Okay? Then after the man constructing this house, the woman said that since you have constructed for me the house, now we are good to go for customary marriage. So the parents of this woman came and they agreed with this man that let us go and choose from the crowd, okay, the bride price, and they did the same. However, on choosing from the crowd the said bride price in form of cattle, it was transferred to the home of their daughter, this new home they had constructed. So after some time, this woman came to realize that the man was contracting another marriage. Then she caveated the marriage at Mbarara Cathedral. Upon caveating the marriage, okay, upon caveating the marriage, she was told to show cause why the caveat should not be vacated. So under such circumstances, she alleged that they are legally married under customary law because these guys are going to contract a church marriage. So as a result of that, court came to their rescue, and the man raised an issue that I had two farms, farm A at my main home and farm B at my new home. So me, I just did a transfer of some of my properties from farm A to farm B. So court had to determine that for valid price to be valid, it should have crossed from to the possession of guardians. So where it doesn't reach the guardians, it is not marriage. You've not yet paid the bride price. Okay? So after those two specific prerequisites, you will add on the first prerequisites, then you get the general prerequisites of that kind of marriage. Okay? Then let us look at how this marriage is celebrated. Okay? How this marriage is celebrated. We said in celebration, we look at time, place, and who officiates. Okay? So, starting with time. Starting with time. Yes, Council. Yes, Council Sophie. Council at Higher Patricia. How do we celebrate customary marriages? Okay, so let's get back. Okay, when it comes to celebration, the law has not specified the time of customary marriages, but time is what we call the reasonable man's time. So are we together on that? Okay, but according to the customs, we know the time. Okay, it is from 9 literally to 6, but we just exceed that time by osmosis. Then place of celebration. Place of celebration. Where do we celebrate this marriage from? Council Vanessa. Where do we celebrate this marriage from? Yes. Where do we
From the
celebrate these
girl's
marriages?
home.
Okay. Because it is depends on the customs. In our customs, it is celebrated at the girl's home. Whether you like it or not, everyone bagenda bitwala wammwe. Okay. Then we've looked at time and place of celebrating. Then how many witnesses are required? Okay. How many witnesses are required? How many witnesses are required? It should be noted that one of the most witnessed marriages is customary marriages. Okay. You can testify. Okay. You can testify. Those who want to leave marriages, most of them are held incommunicado, not because they want to leave, but every time they talk to their singers or their mothers that, you know what, Jeff is not a good man as I thought. Then the mother will be like, mwana wange guma, abantu bonna abaali mu tent wano tubagambe ki? Nti wavaayo munnange. Okay? Some mothers are funny, they just tell you, bonna tubaleeta obannyonnyole. Okay? Bonna tubaleeta obannyonnyole nga bw'ovaayo, bwakubira bujjambo ng'ogenda tubaleete. So literally akugamba sigalayo. Okay? Are we together? Because of it is celebrated and a lot of people testify that, oh, bamututte takyali katale. Okay? So are we together on the celebration? So then let's go to the nature of, okay, the nature of this type of marriage. Okay. Also, the nature of this type of marriage is basically polygamous. It is potentially a polygamous marriage. You are allowed to add on, okay, provided you are conducting only customary marriages. That is the requirement, okay, provided you are conducting only are we together? Okay. Any question on customary marriages? Any question? Any question, members?
Council, I have a question.
Yes.
When I was trying to read the act on the prerequisites, or what actually the requirements for one to conduct a customary marriage, there's a
Okay.
contradiction I found in age, because I don't have my act here. I would have actually paraphrased it for you. It was saying that for a girl, she has to be 16 years, and then for a boy, it has to be 18 years. So, in regards to the girl's age of 16, isn't that now inconsistent with article 30? Is it 31 or 30? Is it 31 or 35 provides for marriage, and people to conduct marriage should be of 18 years of age. So
Council,
I
what
would
is
seek your
under Article
position
2?
in the same.
Council, what is under Article 2 of the Constitution?
That anything that is inconsistent to the constitution is null and void. Any law.
Oh. So what is the fate of that provision?
So that means it will be null and void.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Council.
You're welcome.
So maybe, Council, the other thing is on bride price. Uh, does half payment of bride price nullify the marriage? If the parents come out to claim, the parents of the girl come out to claim for the balance, what would be the basic law to use in that regard to affirm that maybe if there is part contribution, then there is valid customary marriage?
Council, when you look at the issue of payment of bride price, we made it clear that bride price half payment does not invalidate the marriage unless a demand has been made and you don't respond to that demand. Okay, that invalidates that, where eh, the guardian, okay, of your intending wife gave you consent to proceed without payment of the same, your marriage is valid, Council. So don't fear to get married, customary.
Thank you, Council. I get the point. So, Council, will I be right if I quoted this case of Uganda versus Kato on the same?
You will be right, Council.
It's Uganda versus, is it Peter Kato?
In that case, the reason why it's called Uganda, it was a criminal case. They were testing the principle of what principle was being tested? Compellability of witnesses. The general rule is all persons can be dealt with in the law of evidence generally, because every person can testify, but you have those, okay, that are excluded, and among those, okay, we have married people. So court had to answer that issue in that case because of that. Okay, so any other question? So do you have any other question? Yes. So colleagues, I pray that we bring this session to an end so that tomorrow we deal with the two types of marriages. We deal with the duties and obligations after entering into marriages, and we deal with separation, inshallah. Okay. So if there is no question whatsoever, allow me bring it to an end. So let me wish you the best. Let's meet tomorrow, inshallah.